Welcome to Off the Console. This is the hottest new podcast where we talk about video games and technology. And while, yes, we're all content creators that also focus on the Steam Deck and such, it's not just a Steam Deck podcast. It's a general gaming and sometimes general technology podcast. But we don't have any of those general technology topics for today. Thought about bringing some in, but no. So I guess it's time for us to introduce ourselves. I'm High Tech Low Life, and I have my two co-hosts right here. Say hi.
Hello.
Hello.
And so I'm just a content creator that works a daytime job. I'm not a game developer. I know some web design, but that's not my daytime job. What about you guys?
I'm a game developer. My name's Gardner Bryant. If you haven't heard of me, I'm over on youtube.com/Gardner Bryant. And I do video games. I do videos about video games and Steam Deck mostly, and Linux. I'm a huge Linux zealot.
Yeah, I think I've watched some of your content in the past when you were before the Steam Deck even came out about Linux and such.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I have. I'm James Brinkroff. I'm also the Brink or Games Revealed. You'll better know me as for my YouTube channel, and I cover Steam Deck gaming more into tech again, and also do game development myself. But I'm also a developer, so I kind of blur both lines on that. And yeah, it's a fun ride. I love talking about this type of stuff. So.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mostly do printer-related matters, so you can imagine how fun that is. I know you guys hate printers.
A masochist. I hate printers with a passion.
Don't worry, man. It's because you're probably just using HPs. That's why.
I am cheap. I don't use a printer very often, so I have this one that requires a subscription. So it's like a hostage situation here.
What do you mean?
Oh my goodness!
A printer with a subscription?
That's how they've gone to microtransactions or whatever it is. No, printers nowadays, they have subscriptions if you want to get the one that's really cheap, and then if you run out of ink, they just ship it to you automatically. It's a convenience factor, but
you gotta use those laser printers with toners, man. You know, like stuff from not HP, of course. Something from Konica Minolta. You ever heard of them?
No.
They're like a printer brand from Japan. They're pretty good.
I try to avoid printing. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's valid. That's valid.
Yeah, if I have to pick a printer brand, I tend to go with Brother just because their Linux drivers seem to be better than HP's.
Yeah.
But it's a hard sell. I don't know why. Every client that I've ever bought printers for is like, oh, I want an HP. No, I really don't.
Oh my god.
Yeah, they're not great. I guess I'm the masochist by having an HP.
I mean, I have one too. It's an ink tank one. It's not a subscription one though. But yeah. So I think it's time for us to get into our first topic, the Steam Next Fest. As you know, the Steam Next Fest is a celebration of upcoming games featuring literally hundreds of demos to try out, and from all sorts of developers of different sizes. And I know, most of the time we think of indie games when we think of Next Fest, right? But did you guys know, you and the audience know that Square Enix has sometimes participated in the Next Fests?
Yeah, I think I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I know they did that last time they did a Next Fest. I think it was for, I don't know. But this time they're participating for Romancing Saga 2 or something like that. So what demos have you guys tried out?
I have not tried a demo out. I've been playing Deadlock lately. I have watched trailers though, and I will have to say that the Cthulhu one got my eye. I love Cthulhu stuff. So,
what about you, Gardner? I know you've tried out a few demos.
Well, I was late getting to the podcast because I was actually playing the Commandos Origins demo, and if you've never heard of Commandos, it was an old PC game. I don't know how to explain it, except it was like a real-time strategy, except instead of commanding a whole bunch of units, you only had a few. A little bit like XCOM, but real-time. And man, it's been a minute since I've played the old Commando games, and this one is 3D. It's done in the Unreal Engine, I think, Unreal 5, and I was literally getting sucked in, just like when I was a little kid and I would get sucked into the Commandos, because it's got that perfect strategy and risk reward kind of thing. You can like click on enemy soldiers to see like a vision cone, and you can like sneak around them and, kill them from behind, or like, and pick up their body and hide it. It's a little bit of some of the mechanics in it, I think, inspired Splinter Cell in some ways, just like the ways that you can interact and fool the computer players. And I literally I booted it up like, I don't know, at like 11 o'clock, and then I was still playing it at like 11:20, 10 minutes after you guys had messaged me like, where are you? So yeah, it's a pretty good game. It
looks good.
Seems really cool.
I remember the old games too. Yeah,
That's
I just added it to my
yeah. That's
library.
one I'll have to jot down and remember to try out if the demo's still around after the next event.
Yeah.
That is.
I
that's
think that
true.
originally it was like an Enix or game or something like that, or no, Eidos, right?
Eidos?
Eidos,
Like,
yeah.
oh, like the guys behind Tomb Raider and Deus Ex?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
originally it was published by them. I think it's published by someone else now.
Oh.
But yeah, it's super fun. I really recommend it. And the other one I tried was Balloonaire, which is like a Plinko style game, or Pachinko style game.
Oh, I've tried that one.
And yeah,
Oh,
it's pretty neat. Tell me, what was your experience with it?
So I thought it was pretty neat. I think I will have to dive into it more to fully understand the game myself. I mean, I get the gist of it. It's kind of like a roguelike pachinko game. It's like
Yeah,
Balatro, but, well, no, it's not like Balatro, but like it's the same idea. It's like taking a gambling like sort of game and then turning it into like a roguelike.
yeah,
It's a
that was kind of my experience with it too.
yeah. And honestly, I think it's on a lot of people's radar. Like, it looks really nice and it plays pretty well too.
Mhm.
And so essentially, aside from just being a pachinko board, you also add a bunch of what are they called? You know what those things you place called?
I don't remember what they called them, but they were like bonk. You're supposed to get the ball to bonk into them, and they worked similar to like the ejector things in a pinball game, where like you hit the ball, hits it, and then it like pushes it out and makes it bounce off really really quickly.
Yeah, and they all have different
Um,
effects, special effects.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it. It was fun, but my biggest issue with it was actually the physics of the ball. Like they felt a little too heavy and not bouncy enough to me. And I'm very particular about physics based stuff.
Hmm. Well, I mean, maybe submit feedback to them. Maybe people have the same feeling too. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've never actually played pachinko, so I wouldn't know the physics behind like a pachinko ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was less like I'm less particular about them trying to emulate a pachinko ball. It just like the way the ball would move just seemed a little too repetitive to me. I think it was like, because like the ball seemed to usually go down the outside paths to me, like rather than going like randomly through the course.
Really?
So
Uh,
yeah, I didn't get much variety in the way the ball was moving.
That's odd. Mine were all like centralized, like in the middle. Mine
Oh,
rarely
really?
went on the outside. I could place like all the
Huh.
cactuses there and get my bonuses from the cacti there.
Nice.
As for other Next Fest demos, honestly, I've tried out way too many. But there's one I really liked called Metal Bringer. You ever heard of that?
I have not.
So it's like a action roguelike with like extraction. Like I don't want to say extraction shooters because it's not an extraction shooter. But essentially, you can go through. You pilot a robot. You pilot a remote controlled robot called a Labor, and then you can also find giant mechas called arms that you can pilot from those Labors. And essentially, it's like a hack. It's like a hack and slash. You can like find weapons and find blueprints for those weapons, and also find blueprints for your own custom arm as well, so to speak. And it's really fun. And you can also find discs that you can decrypt and then permanently add to your Labor. And
That looks cool. Yeah, I'm looking at the trailer right now. I like the art style a lot.
Yeah, it's probably the one I like the most out of all the demos I've tried, but maybe I just haven't looked hard enough.
I mean, have you tried Wild Assault yet?
What?
The free shooter?
Wild Assault?
Yeah, yeah. I was looking through all of them and watching some stuff, and
Oh shit!
this is
Oh,
it's geared towards the furry community.
oh! I wish you would have told me that before I looked it up.
Arguably, I watched some of it. It looked like it'd be fun though, but
I'm sure it'd be fun. I mean, I have no problem with furry games. I like the Dust and Legion tale. For like,
okay,
yeah, that was a pretty good game.
That was an interesting game. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I will admit the combat kind of got repetitive after after learning that the Izuna drop combo like decimated everything in the game. But yeah.
I think my only problem with it is like their artwork. Their is the sexy fox. I'm just like, okay,
Yeah,
they could have done a little differently. That's why I'm making fun a little bit. It looks like it could be fun, but I'm like, okay, choose something a little different.
Dude, you have to choose the caked up fox lady.
I guess, I guess that's true. I'm not the one that they're marketing to, I guess. Worshippers of Cthulhu, that's the one, which is a city building one, which is just, city buildings are really fun if they have the right theme, right? Frostpunk and all that.
Oh yeah.
Like, and this one looks really like my cup of tea of like that horror-esque world of Cthulhu where everything's like doom and gloom, but you get to build a city. So I'm really excited for that one. I'm going to try the demo after this.
Dude, like, yeah, there's so many demos. You get like, I don't know when this episode is going to be released. I hope you guys like at the very least look into the sorts of games. I mean, I have a video on like 10 Next Fest demos I tried out, and I'm definitely going to release like a part 2 with more demos. So I mean, I hope that at the very least, if this stuff ends up being released after the Next Fest ends, you'll at least look into the games. Maybe the demos will still be there. Some demos stay after the Next Fest, but some demos, they go away after the Next Fest and become unplayable.
Especially if it's an online one. I feel like that tends to be the case too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's like Dark and Darker or something like that. That one, I think, is one of those. That came from Next Fest.
Dark and Darkers 2 is out. Dark and Darker's out now, though.
It is, but it was back. It started like they were They featured themselves like I think on multiple Next Fests, and they had their demo going. That's why it's like important to get to the demo before it closes because they're an online. I believe they closed it at least the first time that they did it on Next Fest. I could be wrong on that, but
that makes sense. Yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah,
it is what it is. I have some other Next Fest demos I've tried out, but there's been so many Next Fest demos, man. Anyways, you guys, so what do you guys think about the Next Fest, like in general? Like, honestly, I think it might be Valve's best event.
I would agree. I think that it like encourages developers to create like actual sizable demos. When I was a kid, demo discs were like my favorite thing, right? Like I grew up pretty poor, so I didn't get a new game every week or a new game every month. I got a demo disc, and sometimes they were secondhand demo discs from friends, So like, I loved the concept of the demo and giving a game a try, and then making up my mind that way. And I think that that's something that we've kind of lost in the digital era, and Valve's really put in a lot of time and effort, not just into like Next Fest, but like into improving the demo experience on Steam too. And so to have something that celebrates upcoming games with demos, I think is a really neat thing.
Yeah. I'm a big demo person myself, at least back in the day. Nowadays, I'm just a collector of games that I don't play. PlayStation, the PlayStation demos, the PC Gamer. I was a subscriber to PC Gamer and got their demos all the time. Loved it.
Yeah, I really enjoy demos. I think demos are great. I mean, they help out with.
I think it's a good path.
It's a good path, and I'm glad
it's a very good path.
I'm glad that Valve's making demos vogue again. I don't want to give Valve too much credit for things, but like, they brought demos back from the grave.
I agree with you on that. I think it's important. Well, also for them, like, I think give them credit, but also understand why they did it. And it was partially, I'm sure, to help with refunds and not having to be such a load. Because if you have if you market your game in such a way, but you go and play it and it's very different or it feels different, whatever it is, then, you're going to refund it. Right. And they had a good policy, but I have a feeling they probably got tired of refunding games, and it gives them more cadence to not refund everyone because they beat it in let's say 2 hours or something like that. I don't know. It's just, I think it's a good thing. Makes it so that I can try the game out before I actually buy it, which I think is always a win. Plus, for these developers, it's a very good way to market something that's a small piece of what they have, and they can put a lot less marketing, I think, into the whole of the project, and put instead of having to compete with AAAs, they compete on the next fest level of not have to put as much into their marketing and more into just that good sizable game demo that is going to be in the game anyways. So I don't watch the Next Fest too much, but I have bought and played games from Next Fest, and I think it's a great tool for promoting indies.
So, speaking of the Next Fest, I've heard a lot of talk about how developers claim that their demos on the Next Fest isn't helping them, whereas, other demos, like, let's get Balatro. Balatro was on the Next Fest, right before it was released, and we all know how successful that game was, right? And I don't want to say it was attributed to the Next Fest, but I think it was attributed to the Next Fest. I think it should be attributed, at least in part, to the Next Fest. Yeah, so I actually saw this post on Reddit. I just sent it to our group chat. It's about a guy talking about how a lot of posts in r/game dev have been complaining about how their games haven't been getting traction due to the Next Fest. And this guy is talking about how most quote unquote indie games are not that visually appealing. It looks like, the headline says the reason the Next Fest isn't helping you is probably because your game looks like a child made it. That's kind of hard.
It's true though.
Yeah.
Partially. I don't know if I've seen many games on Next Fest that are like a child made it, but a lot of the creativity and competitiveness in the game world isn't in the AAA titles as much now as it is in the indie titles. And with game engines coming out that are easier to build stuff, with making games, it's very competitive. And so you have to have something that jumps out, that's creative, that's something that's catchy for people. And if it's your first game, if it's your first product, you're just learning how to do these types of practices, this type of work to attract to other people.
Yeah, I agree. And even just from a marketing standpoint, if you make a game that appeals to people, it'll probably do well. And I guess the truth of the matter is, not all games can succeed.
No, there's
it's not just the fact is there's thousands of people releasing games every day on Steam, right? The number of new releases on Steam last year was like 10,000 new games. Am I wrong? It was something crazy like that. It was very high. And so it's very hard to stand out. And especially in a sea of amateurish games, right? When I released Doodlings in March, right? The game only sold 500 copies. And I have a YouTube channel. I have 300,000 people a month watching my show. And even then we couldn't sell very many. So part of it might be just the way the game looks, right? It takes more than just fun gameplay. You have to have a game that stands out amongst the competition, and in a way that's spectacular, right? That's one of the things about Balatro is the level of polish on that game is so high that the other titles are just don't compare really. So it's about, there's more to it than just having a good game. You have to have a game that really stands out among the competition. Yeah. I don't know.
No, it's either it's got to be very polished, very eye-catching, or you just got to go really different. Lethal Company, I think, is a great example of this. It's just nothing's been created quite like Lethal Company. Now there's a lot of clones, but very indie, right? Very unpolished in most aspects, but its core gameplay loop is very different.
It's like one of those like choose two, like out of three like situations where you have to choose like innovation or just polished or looking presentable, I guess. I mean, I think that it's a vertical slice of a game though. Like a demo is ultimately just a vertical slice. It's like a playable version of like an E3 showcase. So I think at the very least, some of these developers could do is polish up the demo to like just polish the demo up like really well, because I understand making games is hard, but first impressions are everything. And quite honestly, I have played some demos that I thought what I would enjoy, but I just didn't enjoy because like it just there's something about it, like I don't know, the lack of polish, or perhaps maybe the fact that it does feel like a work in progress game. I mean, to be fair, I think some of them just are like beta versions of a game as opposed to like a polished demo. That's just my opinion though.
Demos are weird. They don't need like polishing is great. At least back in the day, like it is a slice of what you're trying to build, but maybe the whole piece isn't together. And so really, while polish is important, it's really, you got to catch to them with your gameplay loop, right? Like that's when you're doing game development, what's the core of your game? And if you can catch them with that, that you win. And that's where you have to polish is that like core gameplay loop. Other parts could be a little bit more rusty or like not like done, but as long as it looks like it's decent, I think you got a winning model. And that's my opinion though.
Demos are like interactive trailers, right? Where it's like you have like in a trailer, your goal is to like sell the concept of the final product, and pretty much every like pre-release trailer says not representative of final gameplay, right? Something like that. And the same thing with demos. It's like if you release a demo, it's not important that all the pieces are final. It's that the gameplay loop, like you were saying. It's like the gameplay loop is the thing that you have to hit, and
right.
This is what the game's going to feel like, and you have to sell the vision of what it's going to be, right?
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that assertion. I mean, demos, it's like a first impression. If a marketing campaign doesn't hit properly, then no one's gonna buy it. In fact, some people might swear off it too. Like
Well, it's like what Valve, like one of the reasons Valve cited revamping the whole demo thing on Steam was because there was a lot of developers that were doing like prologues, right? Which are basically demos, but with different content. It's the same gameplay, just with like a little bit of a different story or whatever.
Right.
And so that's kind of, that's a really interesting and innovative idea, but it's also kind of looking backwards, like what has the industry done before to market a game? It's like demos, right? So it's just a little tweak of the same idea, and just selling the concept of what your final product's going to be. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, it's kind of like greenlit. Is it greenlit games or whatever? Like the
the old like greenlight system.
Oh, greenlight.
Do they still use that? I can't remember. Like, but you can buy a game, it's not finished, right? And they finish it. Like, I actually didn't mind that for open world games like Forest, but like. For other games, it didn't sell them. It really hurt them in some ways.
I think you're thinking of early access.
Early access is what I'm thinking. Greenlight, but Greenlit was a thing too. Yeah,
Greenlight was when was like trying to get approval to even be on Steam back when Steam was a lot more strict with what could go on there. Yeah. Like I remember, like back in the.
I was thinking of early access.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, like indie games couldn't even get on Steam because. Well, I don't know the exact logistical reason behind it, but essentially they just couldn't get on Steam. And there was a Steam competitor that focused entirely on indie games, like Disura or something like that. I don't know. I was a little kid when I found this stuff out, but they don't exist anymore, of course.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the innovation that NY Steam and Valve's done so well is. These systems that they put in place is a winning model to promote a system that kind of almost regulates itself in some way. And so that's why they're top dog right now.
Mm-hmm.
We need competition, but it's really hard.
So one last demo I do want to talk about before I talk about it, though. What are your thoughts on like using AI in video games? I don't mean like using AI for art or music, but like actually using like AI systems, so to speak.
It depends to me on like how you're using it, honestly. Like if you've got some overhead, like some room on like the GPU to like add some kind of machine learning or whatever to your game, you can do it, right? But like I don't know, if it has to do anything like connecting to the cloud, I'm not interested in that.
Okay, so I don't know if this game uses the cloud or not, since I'm always connected to the internet anyways. I should probably figure that out. There's this demo I tried out called AI2U or something like that. Let me look it up actually. AI2U.
AI2U.
Yeah, it's a game that's basically like an escape room. You've been locked into an apartment with like a crazy psycho, like she wants to be your girlfriend, and you have to try to not piss her off while also investigating how to escape. And one of the main features is that you can actually converse with her, and she responds to you using AI responses. And you have to type out your like responses or speak to her using your microphone, and it works on the Steam Deck as well.
Interesting.
That is actually kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
It uses AI though. Like what's the premise of using the AI? A lot of those models are already like speech to text. Other stuff can be put into a simple system to and parsed out. But
so in my experience with it, I have to come, like she gets suspicious of you like snooping around and trying to get on her computer, and she gets upset with you leaving her behind, and then you have to be like, and then like I'm not gonna lie, most of my time was just spent apologizing to her. So be like, sorry, I won't do it again. And then she's like, oh, that's okay, or some shit like
gosh.
that.
So there's an AI generated content disclosure on this, and it says all the art assets in the game are not AI generated, but it says NPC dialogue and voice is generated by large language model and text to speech technology.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna guess like if I try to download this and it's less than like a gigabyte, then it's probably not and like done locally. That's just my
That's a hard one too, because it's really dangerous to not do it in a localized way, or in a gated way, because then you're gonna go, and if they're using, let's say, OpenAI, and something just goes awry, they're gonna have a really weird chain of conversations. But yeah, I mean, I for me, I don't care if it goes to the cloud or not for these types of things. If it's dialogue based, if you saw, there's it was with the Unreal Engine. It was with, I think, or maybe not. Maybe it was. Well, there is an Unreal Engine version, but there's also, I think, a Grand Theft Auto mod where you can talk with the NPCs, and it's generated from AI or machine learning, and you can have dialogues and talk to the NPCs in a very natural but very bizarre way, because this is an AI talking back to you. That type of stuff is very interesting for me. I really like that. AI generated content, as long as it's like done in a creative and a decent way, I'm fine with. But like if your whole game is created by AI, I honestly, or most of it is, like all your assets, almost everything pretty much is. That's kind of a turn off for me on.
Is it even your game at that point?
There's tools right now to create it. They're already creating at the level of Doom, which is very, like, you think about it, not very complicated, but the technologies that had to go into Doom at the time to create that type of thing, the math was crazy. And so they have a generative AI that can create games like Doom at that level. And so it's going to get much more complex. Like it's going to be the complexity is just going to be out the roof, the more detailed it gets, but it's coming. Is it going to be interesting? Probably not for a few decades, in my opinion.
So I understand that the math to create Doom was insane at the time. Though the game in concept is I don't want to say it's simple, but it is kind of it's simple to explain. Like you point and click and shoot things. I'm wondering if it could make a game like if it's like I'm curious if it would be able to make a game like Diablo. Like I think part of it might be that because these games already exist, it knows how to make them. But I think just it won't be able to make innovative games, so to speak. You know, games with brand new features or maybe even a new type of game altogether.
I think you'd be surprised what it can generate. It could do near. It can take systems and combine them and make something new, which could be innovative. But yeah, something like, I don't know. I'd have to see it, but I've seen AI handle creating, like combining like two concepts together and doing something creative that way. But it wasn't like, it was building off of creativity of others, which is what we already do.
Yeah.
We're just not there yet though, for that, what you're talking about.
So yeah, this game is about, according to Steam, it's about 3.37 gigs.
Yeah.
So maybe it does everything locally. I'd have to try it out offline to see if it works, but it's an interesting concept. I do like these sort of proof of concepts. They're certainly a lot better than like a game where it's just all like anime, like AI art or some bullshit like that. It's more creative, and at least they didn't generate the art assets with the AI either, which is good. It shows that they are having some considerations. I'm just curious to see if they're also paying the girls that they took the voice models from.
That is also a very sketchy thing in the future, is likeness and voices, image, all that stuff. Like
Jeff Geerling, he had his voice stolen for an ad.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And MKBHD too. I mean, to be fair, he's like a 14 million subscriber YouTuber. I can see why people would want to steal his voice, but like, yeah, it's happening. I think we
but
will have.
Did they?
Yeah.
I feel like there's been actors that have sued and won because they've tried.
Yeah,
right now it's not.
Did.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I think legality, like from like the law, I think you can't do that actually, and so we'll see how it turns out. But royalties will be in play unless you sign. And some actors, I think, from my understanding, Hollywood's actually trying to get some actors to sign like likeness agreements for where they can own the likeness and their brand.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation. Like, I understand, like, these sort of like AI voice firms, they're not like super big. They're not like the mega corporations like you would think of. And so I think it is more possible for like actors to sue them and win. But like, Garden, let's say like someone stole your voice to endorse a product you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you'd have the financials to like take them to court if they refuse to like comply nicely?
I probably would not have resources to do that. No.
Small claims court is the thing. There's ways to do it. You're not completely helpless, but how much are you going to win is very, it could still be very messy. Right. So
right.
You definitely, that's a hard one.
Yeah. The thing is, like, it would not be hard to steal my voice, right? Like, I've got literally thousands of YouTube videos, and most of the time I don't have background music in there. And even if I did, like, you can isolate the voice from that, and that's all training data, right? So, I actually wrote a license for my content that says you can't use my license, my voice, any of my content to train AI. The only exception was like to produce subtitles, right? For assistance technology.
Oh,
that's
and
cool.
That's actually cool. Like my most popular GitHub repo is the license that I wrote for this. But yeah, and it's like I've been concerned about this since like 2018. Like I've been very like worried about like having my content out there with my real voice and my real face in there.
And there's definitely some nefarious uses for it too. Linus Tech Tips told his bank that he doesn't like, if he's not in there in person to do anything, do not engage with anyone that claims to be like,
Yeah.
do not, even if he calls
That makes
himself, I
sense.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
interesting.
license, can you link us to it so I can borrow that license for myself too?
Yeah, I,
mean,
think that.
Yes.
That's
I'll
awesome.
find it.
Yeah.
Like
Thanks, Gardner.
You're welcome.
He's a true open sourcer right there, man. Yeah, I haven't had like my voice stolen, but I've had videos stolen and used in ads or like clips of my video to endorse products and stuff.
Yeah, I have too.
The
Yeah.
only time someone's stolen my video is when I upload some Nintendo gameplay. People did it as like a precaution to in case Nintendo would ever sue me or some bullshit like that. I mean, I don't think they would ever do it because I'm such a small YouTuber.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Russ though.
Context.
Yeah, so I'm gonna keep it short. Two of his videos were taken down and strucken by is that a word struck by Nintendo.
Mhm.
And he has 2 copyright strikes and one more, and he could get his entire channel and livelihood taken down.
Oh, yeah.
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 We talked about this earlier in a episode that hasn't gone up yet because reasons. We'll discuss that in the future.
Technical reasons, yeah.
Yes.
What I mean, speaking of technical, I'm really curious what Valve's doing.
Oh. Yeah,
Like,
I am too.
Yeah.
I want to know what they're releasing. I mean, Deadlock is at least a new game, but what hardware are they doing? Like, I want to know the goods that they're doing.
Steam Deck 2, for sure. It has to be. It's like their best-selling hardware.
Absolutely. I mean, Lawrence Yang, a couple of days ago when they were down in Australia, like went to was it reviews.org or something?
I think it was
Australian
Press Start.
Oh, was it Press Start? Okay.
Yeah.
But he, Lawrence was talking about how they are working on new hardware, which is interesting because they hadn't said that they were working on hardware. They said that they were thinking about like the next generation, right, of what the Steam Deck could be. But they've reiterated the same thing that they've said multiple times, where it's like we're waiting for a generational leap, right? They don't just want to release incremental hardware on a incremental upgrades on a yearly basis, and that's something that I respect about Valve, right? Like the fact that they're not doing the iPhone thing, they're not doing the Samsung Galaxy thing, right? Like, and they're not doing what Ioneo and
Oh God.
ROG Ally is doing, right? Where it's like every year we're gonna increase the clock speed by like 0.2 gigahertz and add like a couple more CUDA cores or whatever to the APU. It's like they're waiting for something substantial that's actually worth their customers upgrading for, and I think that's something that deserves respect.
I'm not really against the yearly upgrade cycle. It allows for people if they want to upgrade yearly or if they want to upgrade every 4 years, it's fine. My problem is once it gets very like in a monetary way, right? Like Apple is obviously holding out upgrades instead of upgrading that year. And then if you don't have a good upgrade for the next year, waiting, it's just become, instead of actually releasing what they have, they just, plan it out. That's my problem, right? So Steam Deck 2, I want it now, but I understand.
Okay, I agree. So let me be the first to say that the Ioneo release cycle is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, how many devices have they released like a year? Like 6?
Something like that.
Oh my God.
Well, in their defense, they make money selling hardware.
Right.
Valve doesn't need to. Like, they make money selling software for their hardware, and that is something that should be mentioned because, Valve can take their time. Their business doesn't depend on selling new Steam Decks.
True.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
Neo and RG Ally and all these other folks, they like
Mhm.
the hardware game is their whole business.
But
So
isn't it detrimental though to do that? Like too many. I feel like you don't want to like if you want to yearly releases have like 3 lines maybe, but
Yeah.
they,
Oh yeah.
and they're trying to innovate too. Like they have some different stuff, which is cool, but it is a little out of control.
I would agree. Yeah.
They also have the Chinese market too. I believe that they also market too, and that's probably where I wouldn't be surprised if they made more money from that. But
yeah, that makes sense. I understand. I mean, they have different like form factors. I will say they have like the Ioneo Flip and the Flip but with a second screen instead of a keyboard, and then the Ioneo Slide, and then the Ioneo Lite, and then the Ioneo Kun, I think it is,
yeah,
and then the that's a lot already. Anyways,
Yeah. And then
back.
GPD has a whole bunch of other ones too, right? Like they have the Win Max, and like all these other like
Yep.
different form factors.
I agree.
Too.
I agree with
Yeah.
that, though. I think Ioneo is still doing a
Yeah.
lot more. So
Yeah.
I will say the Steam Deck 2 is an interesting prospect because we all know that it's going to be more powerful. The question is, how much more powerful would it have to be deemed a generational leap? Like, what percentage? Like 50% more frames per second, 50% more performance for the same wattage?
I think the battery life is their biggest consideration. So being able to like do 50-60% more performance while having the same 3-ish hour battery life, depending on what game you're playing, I think that's going to be big for them. I think when DDR comes down in price and they can like triple the RAM maybe, and have it be the same, like better bandwidth, and have it be the same cost for them, I think that might be what they're looking for too. There's also the consideration that Valve is working on FEX, which is the x86 emulator for ARM, and the fact that they could be looking at like bolting an AMD GPU to an ARM processor and having the vast majority of games on Steam run through an emulator, but passing all of the Vulkan stuff natively to a PC, you know, a PC scale GPU might be one way that they're looking to solve this performance issue.
yeah. AMD is releasing their first ARM chip next year, from my understanding. It's on the
Really?
roadmap at least,
Mm-hmm.
and
This
so
is news to me.
yeah, it's on the roadmap. They're supposed to be like it, and so, but they're also ARM, Intel, and another company is teaming up to try to save x86. But ARM, honestly, if AMD's like what Gardner's saying, pair it with the AMD's GPU architecture with an ARM CPU chip on an APU, like you're going to have a winning factor there for battery life.
Mm-hmm.
I think Apple's proven it with their M1 or their M series chip that like my battery life and my heat distribution, like the heat reduced greatly, and my battery compared to my older MacBook to my newer one that's an M2 is night and day. It's like 200% more battery life. It's crazy how much more battery you get with very little performance hits. I really think Valve would be if they want a better battery life, and they could probably easily double what the Steam Deck's performance is in the next year or two. I think that's the winning factor, and I think that's what they're probably at least testing out right now. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. This is probably my most like curious topic on the whole Valve Steam Deck thing is, are they going to use ARM for Steam Deck or for Deckard, or for another project that they might have? I'm really curious, but if I had to do like a hard prediction right now, I think an ARM's coming down they're gonna have an ARM.
I think there's no question that Deckard is going to use ARM because the Quest uses ARM, and there's already that library of VR support for ARM. But Valve also has their own library of x86 VR titles, and so I think that it only makes sense to have ARM on Deckard. But they're already doing this work, and they're talking about the battery life and wanting to preserve that for a Steam Deck 2 or future Steam Deck hardware. And so if they're already doing the work, they're already investing the money, it would probably make sense to me to kind of just be one of the leaders in PC gaming moving from x86 to ARM.
Huge
that
deal.
just makes sense to me.
Huge stuff. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I don't know if Valve is going to do an ARM Steam Deck next generation. I feel like it might be a little too soon for that, personally speaking. Maybe for a Steam Deck 3, if they ever learn how to count to 3. If they make a Steam Deck 3, that'll be the real test. But
I mean, they're working on a Half-Life 3 right now. We'll see if they jettison it, though. Like, they've worked on it multiple versions of a Half-Life 3, and unless it's good enough, they don't usually ship.
I think it's been they've been working on that for like 20 years, haven't they?
Yeah, but
not continuously.
Yeah, not continuously. And then they've had a Half-Life project probably on and off for almost every year since then. But like Half-Life Alyx, a lot of its innards came from a Half-Life 3 canceled project. I'm super Half-Life nerd. And and then also, just to go back, like ARM has been a part of the desktop / laptop world for almost a decade, right? Like some form or fashion of emulation. There's a lot of open source projects to pull from for them for this emulation software. I would not, depending on what I'd like to see what the results are right now with what they're trying to do with their emulation. I'd love to see their benchmarks, because it really comes down to that emulation software and the complexities, because it's on a CPU level, right? And so of the instructions, that is. And so that's where I'm most interested to see if it will actually be as hard as the GPU or the graphical layer that they had to translate with the Steam Deck 1. That one was a pretty big one. So I'm kind of really curious to see what the difficulty would be with ARM.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a big challenge. However, if they're able to like natively handle most of the like GPU stuff where there's no emulation at all, it should be possible. I mean, Apple proved that, x86 ARM emulation is actually really great. Like, you can do a lot of great work with it, and it's performant, and it still respects your battery, So that's something that, I don't know. When I first heard about Valve working on x86 emulation, I was like, I don't know. I don't think I want more abstraction, But the more I think about it, why does it matter? Like, if it has better battery life and it's virtually indistinguishable from running it natively, who cares,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all abstraction layers on top of everything with working with CPU instructions. So
yeah,
we're not even if you're on Windows x86, like you're on a layer of abstraction. It's not to get too nerdy with all that, but it like a lot, like there's multiple programs out there to play PC games on an M chip Mac Apple, and they work great, with the exception of like with the Steam Deck. Some games don't. There's always going to be that exception, and I think because they already don't support every game on the Steam Deck, they could take that challenge on of like, well, maybe when it first comes out, not all games, but those AAA games that you liked in the past, those do work, and a very good like everything works essentially like from a fidelity level instead of from compatibility level. But yeah, it's I could drone on about this all day.
Yeah.
Dreaming.
Well, no, I think you have a point there, and I think the thing that I've maintained for a while that I think Valve should have been like, I don't know if they should have called it the Steam Deck, like the Steam Deck, right? Like they might have just called it the Valve Deck, and it's similar to Steam, but it has a subset of Steam games. It's not every game on Steam, which it's not, right? Like they can't market it that way. So I think that if they move over to ARM, that could be an opportunity for them to say, hey, this is a clean split right here, and you're gonna own all the games you own on Steam, but it's a subset of games, and these are the games, rather than doing like the weird Steam Deck verified thing. I don't know. I think that it would make more sense if they talked about it like it was a console and it had its own games, and you just got the games you already own for free.
As long as they don't do some weird soft or like hard limiting, and I can try games, because there's a lot of games that aren't verified. Even games that they said that aren't verified, they still work great.
Yes, of course.
And so, yeah, I agree with that. Maybe just like the ARM deck or something like that could be a good way. They could deviate. They could have 2 different versions to test it out.
Yeah, the way I was thinking about it is, it's like, you know, the calling it like the ARM deck, for example. If you call it something else, you're talking to the people who aren't PC gamers, right? You're talking to the console gamers. You're saying this isn't Steam, but with a wink and a nudge to everybody else, right? To the existing PC user base. Like, you know, you don't have to like go into a lot of detail in your marketing, but when you're talking to, you know, your existing audience, that's one thing. If you're talking to the console gamers, that's another thing. I don't know. That's where my head's at with it anyway.
I think the Steam Deck has been pretty successful with console gamers, actually. It's gotten a lot of people to convert over, or at least use it as a portable device. The biggest selling point is, and I will give credit, even though we could talk about this, Steam officially announcing that you don't own your games, right?
Oh boy.
But a lot of game companies, especially AAA, already put that in their terms and service. So it's already been a thing for many years now. But
I mean, it was already in the Steam subscriber agreement too. Like it was in there. So, you know, whenever you like, yeah, I agree with it when you buy a game. Yeah,
that's true.
But you know, just the fact that they're going along with the or following the AB 2426 or whatever the California law was called.
Oh,
I mean, that's a big deal. That's why they did it, right?
Well, I think technically speaking, we don't technically own our physical games too, right? I mean, I know that we own them in the sense that like Nintendo's not going to go break into your, like, they're not going to issue a search warrant to take all of your copies of Mario Bros or whatever.
I mean, they like probably couldn't.
Yeah, and like so like we own them in like a physical sense, but I think legally we've never owned physical games in a legal sense.
Right. You can own the physical copy of a game, but not the license to play that game. Like it's weird and it's silly, but that's the way it is, right? Like there's a separation, there's a legal distinction between the license you have to use that and the actual physical product. And especially when you have a digital, like an online console, like a Switch or a PlayStation or even a PC, you know, you're going to have, if you had the physical copy, that physical copy can be rendered useless at the flip of a digital switch, and then you're out of luck.
Yeah,
it could. But there'll be some legal issues going on. There's already been legal issues with all this type of stuff. It's definitely worth pointing out that, you know, we should stay up to date on this topic in the sense of making sure that the companies don't take too much leniency on this. We should be able to play our games from 10 years ago if we have a system or something like that that allows for it. If it's an online game and it requires servers on the other side, I get that. Those costs add up. But if it's an offline single player game, they really we need to do better on making sure those are always playable. But at the end of the day, I think they also part of with these types of licenses, they don't want you to sell them too.
Right.
It's a little, used games are a thing that you can sell, but they really you don't own the game, so you can't make copies and sell them. It's kind of also part of the whole thing where, it's, I'm sure there's a lot, I don't know the copyright for that type of stuff well enough, but I bet you that's a very hairy mess of exceptions and stuff.
A couple of months ago, one of my favorite YouTubers, Tech Tangents, made a video about the digital rot of early 20s, early 2000s and 2010s video games. And one of the biggest issues with games from that era, and I'm sure you guys can guess what it is Games for Windows Live, right? Like
Uh-huh.
those servers are offline. They're never coming back. Nobody's working on like an Insignia style emulator because it was crap, right? And so the
It was
only way
bad.
that you can get and the only like you have these old copies of games. I have a few I don't know if I think it might have been Civilizations 2, 4 or something like that. One of them, one of the games I have out there, I cannot play because it hasn't been re-released digitally, right? And it's only available physically, and it has Games for Windows Live. So my options are find a crack, which isn't necessarily legal, or just not play the game that I own, and that really sucks, right?
I
So
agree.
I'm with you. Like this is all about preserving digital games.
Yeah. And I
Ugh.
think the law needs to catch up on that. And I think maybe California, some people don't
Yeah.
like it, but they do try to do certain laws that protect the masses. But it would be one of those things after so much time, if you own the physical copy and they don't give you a crack, like it should be legal for you to be able to crack it and play it. Like you should always be able to play the game that you bought.
Mhm.
In fact, in my opinion, no matter what, like
Yeah.
you shouldn't, unless they want to do a subscription base and it's upon a purchase, that's fine if they want to do a subscription live service kind of based thing. Or if I'm licensing it, I should be able to license it for, however long I own it or have it. That's just my opinion. I think they need to make it much more simple.
So I do want to give a shout out to GOG. Oh, no, we're not sponsored or anything like that. But GOG is a different
Yeah.
storefront. They do sell licenses to games. I should mention that they are still licenses, but you can download those offline installers, and as per their own claims, they can never take that away from you. Like if I downloaded all my entire GOG library onto like a hard drive, stored somewhere else, and then I don't know, maybe 10 years down the line, I want to install some of those games, I can.
Yeah.
No, they do a good job. They just don't have a lot
So
of options, but
So I do want to bring it
Yeah.
back to the Steam Deck 2 for a little bit. So aside from just a perceived performance increase and maybe or maybe not have ARM, the big question is, what other new features would you like as part of a Steam Deck 2? Like something that isn't like performance or battery life.
USB 4.
That's a good one. Yeah.
hands down, if they don't do that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree. And I think they would have a winning model too. And I've talked about this forever with the USB 4, making sure their eGPUs are compatible or some type of, they're working on it. I'd even be down for that. eGPU would make if I had with, let's say, an ARM Steam Deck 2 that's eGPU compatible, that would be probably what I'd game on only. I'd only game on that. As long as everything played at like a medium to high, if it's eGPU, maybe high depending on like latency. That's the problem with eGPUs is latency typically.
Mhm.
I'm 100% down. That's how I'd do it.
Yeah, well, if there's one feature I'd like as part of it, I would want Valve to make some sort of, this is going to sound really unrealistic, but I would want Valve to make some sort of API that lets people like play ad hoc together. Like, like back in the day with the DS and PSP, you didn't need a Wi-Fi, you didn't need a router to play multiplayer games like when you're right next to each other, right? You would just play wirelessly. Imagine that, but for the Steam Deck.
Yeah. I mean, that's hypothetically possible, right?
Right.
Like you could drop into desktop mode and then like enable an ad hoc network and then launch into a game and play with somebody. But what you're saying, like if there was like an API and a GUI to do that, like in Steam, that would be sick.
Yeah, like
That would be really cool.
like do it through Steam and then maybe have game support LAN connectivity.
Yeah.
That would be.
And you know what else would be really cool is if they had like Street Pass style
my God.
stuff like the 3DS had.
Don't-
I would love that.
Oh my God, don't make me take my Steam Deck outside like everywhere I go.
Yeah, the only people that you would Street Pass are like your family who also have Steam Decks.
Maybe like, I don't know, people that go to conventions and stuff. You too.
Oh yeah.
Like
that
game
would be
conventions
cool.
like God, I was gonna say E3. Like PAX.
It's dead.
Like PAX and
PAX,
like
yeah.
Gamescom and Tokyo. Tokyo Game. Oh, I want to go to Tokyo Game Show so badly. It looks so fun.
Mm.
I'd be I don't know if I'd go there and then I just hang out in Japan the whole time. I don't know if I'd go to the show.
Go for.
I do want to go though.
Go for a week though. Go for a week. You get some time to do both. Let's see what else. And speaking of Japan, GameFreak got leaked. Like they've been fished. And on top of that, so what's been leaked? Source code for like some Pokemon games. I think Omega Ruby, or is it Omega Sapphire? I can't remember. The third gen remakes, and also like Scarlet and Violet, like the source code for those got leaked as well. Employee information got leaked as well. That's bad. But the main leak that's been making headlines, aside from like beta designs of Pokemon, are the insane Pokemon lore entries that Game Freak has written, like I guess in their servers or some shit like that. So have you guys read any of it?
I've only heard rumors, and
I've heard
like some of it's really weird.
Oh yeah. So this part's probably going to be not safe for work. We might have to edit this part out for YouTube. But one of the biggest ones has to do with Typhlosion. So so the story is so this part's probably going to be cut out. I don't know if YouTube will allow it, but like essentially Typhlosion like tricks a girl. It's not stated how old this girl is, or if maybe they mean girl as in like female, like maybe she's an adult or some bullshit like that. I don't know, but he tricks this girl into going with him to like a cave, and she doesn't realize that it's a Typhlosion. It's a guy, and the Typhlosion tells her to stay in the cave. He'll bring food, and he just brings a bunch of like Pokeberries to her to eat with her. And then it turns out they have a kid, like a half Pokemon, half like Typhlosion kid. And then the dad kills the Typhlosion because like the girl tells him that essentially the Typhlosion that basically don't kill my father, and then you have to die. And then he's like, okay, and then he dies. And then the child and the girl are ridiculed for basically the child for being a half Typhlosion like abomination. And then they run away, and then they become Typhlosion, and it turns out that Typhlosions are like half humans or some bullshit like that.
What? Oh my god.
You know what? They're getting ready for that adult period of a Pokemon game, right?
Oh yeah.
What a weird concept.
Oh, dude.
I'm sure how you explain it's safe for YouTube, but like that's crazy.
Yeah. I had heard something about that, but I didn't know all the details that
I think yeah, I mean the full story probably has more to it that I just can't remember. But that's basically the gist of the story. There's also some other stories about like how some guy like starts slashing up the bear I can't remember which bear Pokemon they were talking about, but he takes a sword and starts like killing them left and right or some bullshit like that.
I thought Pokemon couldn't die, they only fainted.
Oh, sorry. I meant they fainted from being slashed like through with a sword.
Yeah.
Well,
Pokemon, dude.
They just got tired of making the like kids safe stuff, and they just have this lore of that's so weird. Why would you even record that? I don't get that.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Game Freak is a weird company in general. They act more like a slightly bigger like indie developer, to be like we're being frank.
True. I mean, they are game freaks, so
they really put in the freak in the name.
Yeah, apparently they are more freak than you realize.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Wow.
It wasn't like one of the guys who was like designing Pokemon like in love with like Mewtwo or something.
Mewtwo.
Yeah, or not. I don't know if it was Mewtwo, but I remember reading something. I could be completely wrong about this, but the guy it was Lugia. He was like in love with Lugia because he invented Lugia, and
like in love, or maybe he loves him as like a father would love a child.
No, I think it was more like he started believing that Lugia was actually God. Like, because like Lugia is supposed to be like a deity
Oh my
Pokemon.
God.
I could be completely wrong about that, so don't spread that if it's not true. But like, oh my gosh, yeah, I've read a bunch of weird stuff about people
Oh
that
my
work for
God.
Game Freak.
Game Freak is crazy, man. They also,
Now they live up to their name.
yeah, I mean, they also
Yeah.
published a game or two on Steam. They're not like owned by Nintendo. They are independent. They just have this agreement with Nintendo that gives them access to the most valuable IP in the world, which is honestly a really crazy thing to think about.
Yeah. Like, isn't Pokemon owned by the Pokemon Company, and Game Freak and Nintendo have like equal interest in the Pokemon company?
I
Company,
think so,
something like
but
that.
because of that, because of
They have
Nintendo,
exclusive licenses, I think.
yeah, because of that though,
Mhm.
Pokemon will only ever show up on Nintendo systems.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Nintendo, it's their like golden goose. It's their infinite money glitch, so to speak.
Mm.
It's kid-friendly stuff, and it pairs well with Nintendo. It makes sense, honestly.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's. I'm not in any way surprised. There's probably so much worse. Hanging out there with
Game Freak.
this Pokemon story. Oh yeah, I wouldn't. Who knows if they got the whole thing? That's crazy though.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know why you'd record something like that.
I don't know either,
Yeah.
but we don't even know if it's really canon, given that it came from a leak.
It's not canon.
If it hasn't been published, I don't
Yeah.
think you can consider it canon.
That's fair enough.
Exactly.
So it's basically just official fan fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
I mean, if I went and worked at Valve and started writing Gordon Freeman fan fiction, that wouldn't be a part of the game.
Not yet.
But it gives me good ideas for the future.
So there's also been the source code has been leaked. People are talking about PC ports of the third gen remakes, or perhaps even something like Scarlet and Violet being ported over to PC.
That'll get shut down real quick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's no clean room way to go about that, is there?
No.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sure someone's gonna.
Well,
there's also apparently a PC like version that was leaked of Pokemon Legends ZA or AZ. I don't know. Is it ZA or AZ?
I don't know.
I honestly don't follow Pokemon enough.
So there is a version that runs on PC that was leaked from Game Freak. Apparently, they haven't released it because they claim moral superiority, but obviously that would never be the case, because remember what happened to Insomniac. There was a leaked version of Wolverine, like there was massive Insomniac leaks, one of them being the entire roadmap of like Spider-Man games and how Insomniac is basically going to be a Marvel only studio from now on. And then some like leaked executables of Wolverine, extremely work in progress, by the way. And also like a leak of like a work in progress PC version of Spider-Man, which some like hackers have been trying to like patch up and make actually playable on PC, which, funny story, Spider-Man 2 is coming to PC in January. But yeah, aside from that though, I don't believe there's an actual PC like version of Pokemon Legends that actually runs, because I feel like they would have leaked that like immediately.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, it's just how development works. They could have PC versions or something like where they for testing. But and oftentimes like a lot of the, especially as we Switch is a little bit of a weird exception to this with its architecture, but yeah, I could see there being a PC version, but it wasn't officially going to be released for PC.
I mean, I don't doubt that either. I just feel like if they actually managed to exfiltrate that from the leak, they would have released it like day one, along with all the other stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not rare to have companies do that, right? Like release or not, or have like internal builds of games that they never intend to release, Like, I mean, Pikmin, the original Pikmin has like a working PC executable on the disc. Did you know that?
Like an EXE?
Yeah.
I did not know
No,
that.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
the
that.
original
Crazy.
Pikmin. Yeah. They didn't intend to package it with it, but they did, and you can fully play it. And then
That's
the other
crazy.
one that I'm thinking of is Blizzard has a fully working Linux client for World of Warcraft, and they will not release it. It's only for testing because like half of their devs use Linux to develop the server stuff, and they don't want to have to like boot into Windows. So they have a Linux client that works,
Mm,
just not going to release it.
That's crazy, man.
That's
Yep.
annoying. I'll be
Yeah,
honest. This
yeah.
this whole like,
I did not know
And
about
as
that
we get-
Pikmin stuff.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Or I like that one.
Yeah.
You know what's not cool though? AAA titles
No, I agree.
and how they're just wanting to kill themselves, or not titles, but like publishers and develop these developers. And Ubisoft right now is just
Cratering.
yeah.
Quadruple A development's hard, man. Not everyone can make quadruple A games. Not even Ubisoft.
Hey. To be fair, there's only one quadruple A game. And it's a pirate game.
What is it?
What is the?
Sea of Thieves? No, not that one. No, that's actually pretty fun.
Yeah, no, it's not
Skull and
Sea of-
Bones.
Skull and Bones. The developer said they're the first quadruple A game to ever come out. They mentioned this at the beginning of the year, and it's just been like a laughing stock. Like they just like everyone's laughing at him because first off, it's not,
Yeah.
and then second, it's just they didn't even do it well. Like
It's not fun.
See, I thought
Don't-
the first quadruple A game was Death Stranding.
I could buy that. There's like, I could believe
That's
it.
I was referencing the video game Donkey video. I don't know.
Oh.
Sorry.
I could legit buy that though. Death Stranding being a quadruple A game.
Yeah.
If we
So big you can't comprehend what you're actually supposed to do.
That just goes into like makes me think what makes a triple A or a quadruple A game. What would be the definition of that?
I mean, really, what makes a AAA game or an indie game? Because like, depending on certain definitions, you could consider
Money and size.
like depends on the definition. Because some indie games probably wouldn't qualify as indie games, like anything published by Devolver Digital, right?
Yeah. I mean, Dave the Diver, wasn't that like there was some kind of hubbub about that because it wasn't like published by an indie studio and and it had like a bunch of money behind it.
Yeah, so it was actually published by Nexon, who publishes and runs some of the like biggest MMORPGs out there, like stuff like Maple Story for one. And Dungeon Fighter Online is also insanely profitable overseas. Like I think it's like, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it's like one of the top 10 most profitable games. Like,
Oh, crazy.
yeah, like
Yeah. I would say Hades is a double A where they've leveled themselves up to something like that. Indie is just like a single, obviously, or backed.
You come at it from like a math thing, and I would say like an A and a triple A, or a double A, a triple A, quadruple A. It would be like squaring, rooting, and squaring, cubing, and then whatever that fourth one would be, tesseracting or something. Like it would have to be like an order of magnitude more polished and have like an order of magnitude greater.
Obviously, polishing is not a part of that equation in any way.
No, right.
Grand Theft Auto, I could see Grand Theft Auto being like, let's say the next Grand Theft Auto, if it's what they're saying it is, and they've always delivered, I feel like that could be considered maybe because it will be making billions of dollars.
Well, it's practically
Maybe-
guaranteed at this point.
It's gonna be making billions. Who knows how much? Maybe the next like a quadruple A is like 100 billion, and you have like a team of like
Yep.
I don't
You
know,
have like an
like
entire nation of like
100,000.
developers.
Yeah. Maybe
Did
that's what it's. Oh, that's crazy.
were there games that came out in like the Super Nintendo and N64 era that were considered AAA, like at the time?
Super Mario Bros. Super Mario World.
I don't know. I don't remember hearing that
Yeah.
title until like, or that idea of like AAA games until like late Xbox and early Xbox 360 era.
I want to say Halo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's the thing is like, it has to be like a not just a genre, but like a generation defining title, or in order for me to think about it as something that's set apart from its predecessors. Like a AAA game versus a quadruple A game is going to have to be something like holodeck level, and from my perspective, like
Interesting.
and if I think about that, right, like my, one of the most like amazing and transformative experiences I ever had as a gamer was when I first played Half-Life Alyx, because oh my god, have you played it? It's so good.
I have not. I
Oh,
should.
dude,
It is.
it was worth every cent that I spent on the VR headset. I bought the Valve Index specifically to play Half-Life Alyx, and then I bought a few other little games, and I haven't touched it since. Like, literally, I bought it for Half-Life Alyx, and it was worth the $1,000 that I spent on it, because it was that amazing and transformative of an experience for me. Like, when I was a kid, I went to Disney World, right? Like, I was 12, and I was right at that age where all of the illusions were like, they felt magical to me, and I felt that magical feeling inside my body, right? And then I played Half-Life Alyx, and I had that exact same feeling. It was like this high of like, oh my god, what am, like, my body fully believed that I was experiencing what I was experiencing, and then like like, it was completely immersive in every possible way. And I would say that is more of like a candidate for a quadruple A game.
Yeah. That's. I don't know if I'd go with that scaling, but as far as generational leaps, Half-Life Alyx was like, I've yet to play a game since then that felt so generational, because you could interact with the world.
Yeah.
And because Half-Life's so good at doing this, like, just like they're just, I could go too deep into it, but like it just was very, very unique, very, very immersive. It was crazy. You got to play it, High Tech. Like, it's
so good.
I will at some point. I need to find myself a VR headset that I could do all. Yeah, maybe the Deckard will come out and I'll play it on the Deckard.
True.
I sure hope Valve comes out with a Deckard. I'll buy it, and I'll buy Half-Life Alyx with it too. Maybe they'll come bundle.
Sometimes, honestly, like, I don't know if they still do, but if you get an Index, it's bundled with it. Like, it's free. Yeah, but also the Index was so expensive.
Oh my
It's
god,
$1,000.
You can play it on. You can play it with the Meta VR headsets. The only difference is like the controllers on the Index really make it so that it's very different on like how you pick stuff up.
Yeah,
because it tracks your fingers.
I mean, my brother has an Oculus Quest 2. I mean, Meta Quest 2. Sorry, we can't use the word Oculus anymore. So I might give it a shot at some point in time if I find the time and just space to do it in, because that's another thing too. I don't really have like a good VR space. That's also another major barrier of entry as well. But speaking of which, I think quadruple A games, they could exist. I think a good one could exist. It's just a matter of finding the right people, and most importantly, leadership. I think that's the big fault. I think that's the big fault of Ubisoft, because, I mean, it's gotten to a point where even shareholders are calling for like the replacement of leadership. And I mean, that doesn't happen that often, does it?
Not for
It
Ubisoft.
happens a lot. not for Ubisoft, but it happens more than you think when a company tanks. Shareholders,
Yeah, like
want new leadership, and so usually you'll have a couple of people step down. But like the game industry's been in this weird, like, indies are really rising and doing well. AAA it's a creative endeavor, and they don't understand that. And they're like, well, we want a Fortnite. Like, we'll gamble, even though they could make millions of dollars. Like, if they kept it safe, release the games that they're good at releasing, they'd be making plenty of money. But they want to gamble it to make the Fortnite, and that's what a lot of the problems I think is going on. Is they want Fortnite, they want these either live services or these types of games where you only have so much attention. Like, if everyone's playing Fortnite, why do they want to move from Fortnite over to this other game? And you can't be too similar. It's a whole freaking mess.
It's almost like we're seeing a collapse in creativity. Yeah, so Sony, actually, former SIE chairman Sean Layden, I don't really know much about him, but all I know is that he worked at Sony. He says there's a collapse in creativity, ballooning budgets and risk-adverse publishers. And it makes sense because these games are getting more expensive, and as such, you have to rely on what works as opposed to being able to make experimental titles that can fail, because these companies, they're built for making these massive, and I truly do mean massive games, but they're not built for making experimental games where they could afford to fail if they could. I mean, let's think about it. Like, back in like the PS2 era, I was a kid back then, but there were a lot more experimental titles, and even something like Shadow of the Colossus was highly experimental as well.
Katamari Damacy.
There's a lot of games that failed back in a couple of generations ago. Like, every generation. That's why this is one of those gotcha titles where people always want to like bring stuff up that things are failing. I think the AAA title or the AAA field publishers are failing. We had collapses of plenty, like the Sierra collapsed. There's a lot of like this is cyclical in a lot of ways. The problem is there's so much money injected in it now that the big dogs that have like really good IPs, their potential of failing and getting their IPs sold off is very high. And it's happened before. It's just, this is much more massive in the scale of like money and all that. But we have amazing titles still coming out. We just don't have as many because they don't want to play. They want, like, either gamers expect the best of the best, which is really hard to do. Like, don't get me wrong, but we can still have creative stuff. Astro, what is it on PlayStation 5? The new Astro game came out, and that one's Astrobot, like, did amazing. But then you have other titles that just kind of flop because that, or they do well enough, but because they put too much money into marketing. Dead Space is a great example of this. These are very cult-esque games where they'll make lots of money. Just don't put too much marketing or too much money into certain aspects, and you'll do fine. You'll have a money machine if you want. This is one of those things where I've covered this so many times on like streams and stuff in the past. Like, it's really frustrating because I don't think creativity is dead. There's still plenty of indie games creating great, like, there's still amazing games still coming out. Baldur's Gate 3 came out last year, which was almost a generationally defining title. It's just, with all this, there's a lot of duds that are coming out that are really big duds. Yeah. And so it's crazy. Like, and if you're building an open world game, and this will be, I'll end it on this, but if you're building an open world game, it is so hard to make sure that game is going to work perfectly. You can put boundaries in and stuff like that, but the bigger the game you're going to ask for, the more bugs it's more susceptible to. And I think that's one thing that gamers need to understand sometimes, is that there's a polish level with certain games that you can get to that won't be the same on other games. So I'm off my soapbox.
That's fine. So I will say that there are still developers out there, not just indie developers, of course, but like also like developers in like the single A or the double A range that's still looking to make games, not even just to like make $1 million, like make a fuck ton of money. They're just making games because they enjoy it. Like, you guys heard of Unicorn Overlord by Vanillaware?
I've heard of it.
One of
I
my
haven't
favorite
seen it.
developers, by the way. They're great. You should play all their games. But they like every single game they make, they're like always on the verge of like going bankrupt. And they're a small studio with not a whole lot of money to begin with. But to be fair, that's a little different than say if Ubisoft made Assassin's Creed Shadows and Assassin's Creed Shadows only sold like 1 million copies. Like, yeah, I think it's just a matter of expectation, because like you hear a lot about like companies like Square Enix, where these games on paper they sound like they sold really well, but then Square Enix is going to come out and say, oh, like Final Fantasy 16 sales didn't meet our expectations or some shit like that. Like, what are their expectations?
It's Hollywood accounting too. These game companies will make money off these games over the years through sales, through everything else. They will say this type of stuff, and it's really frustrating. And you can look up Hollywood accounting on YouTube sometime and understand. A lot of companies do this, where they say they lose money or they don't hit expectations to partially to screw people like actors or whoever else they're paying for it, and to it's a little bit messy world when it comes to all this, but it comes down to the game was still probably made what it needed to, and it will probably make a lot of money over a period of over the years. A lot of these games do. So it's a little like, we had expectations. Well, great, you had expectations, but did you at least zero out? And then are you making money now? Like, chalk it up and then build the next game. Don't destroy a whole studio because of it.
Yeah, like the devs of Hi-Fi Rush. Like,
yep,
they
did good.
Yeah, they did it. That was a great game. They, it sold fairly well, even though Microsoft, like, it's debatable whether it was a good idea to put it on Game Pass at launch, right? I think it was a bad idea.
It was good, but like they chalked it up and got like they got in trouble almost for that. It's what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like the AAA publishers are victims of their own marketing at this point. Their marketing is like this: it's bigger, it's better, and it needs more everything, and that's why you want to buy this game. And that is an unsustainable system, right? Like the reason that you can't get to a quadruple A game like we were talking about is because I think it takes literally like an order of magnitude greater than anything that's ever been produced. And while their marketing would be happy to say, oh yeah, this is the biggest, best, most amazing, most advanced, most largest open world expansive game, it's randomly generated, blah blah blah. None of that matters if they can't actually deliver on it. And the fact that Ubisoft has been, recycling the same old franchises for so long, and not really iterating on stuff in any meaningful way that has appealed to me, at least, it's like, it's no wonder that there isn't any creativity. They're making these huge gambles on, on games that aren't doing anything creatively to set themselves apart from anything that's come before. I don't know. That's my thought.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing this with like games like Halo. Let's think about it. Like Halo 1 revolutionized the multiplayer. Like, they revolutionized first person shooters on consoles. I remember like GoldenEye. I can't, like, when I try to go back to playing GoldenEye, I just can't. But like I can go back to playing Halo. And then Halo 2 revolutionized online multiplayer on consoles and introduced, and I think it's like the first game with matchmaking, period. So there's that too. And then Halo 3 added a bunch of like innovative features like Forge and the theater mode, and also had really good physics as well. And then Halo Reach was like the first in the series to, well, actually no, Halo ODST and Reach had Firefight. That was an innovation, but at that point it was something that like some other game did first. I don't know if it was COD Zombies or Gears of War 2 that did that first. I don't know, but anyways, but I mean, people are saying that they want Halo to be like at the forefront of the gaming industry like it used to be, but the truth is that I don't think that'll ever happen, because there's not much they can really innovate on anymore. And I mean, that's just,
They could they could innovate, and if they gave it time to actually, like, let's say 5 years, 10 years, they could probably really, if Half-Life 3 comes out, it's going to be, I think, a generational leap,
Yes.
right? That's what I'm kind of used to with Halos or with some of these titles, is that they're a little bit more generational leaps, and we've kind of lost that. And if you haven't noticed, like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty's, Halos, are they doing as well as they used to? Or are their cash cows kind of running down, and now they have to figure something out?
You know, it was interesting. I watched the trailer for the new Call of Duty, and I hadn't like watched trailers for any of the Call of Duty games for like 10 years. And what I saw was it was for, you know, I don't know if it was for PlayStation 4 and 5 or whatever, but it didn't look any better than a PlayStation 4 game, right? And that's kind of like the issue that I'm having. It's like, I think that if the games industry wanted to move forward creatively, there has to be not just publishers that are willing to take risks, but platform holders that are willing to take risks, right? Like the problem is that Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo to some degree are content with the same controller that we've had for 3 or 4 generations. And they're content with the same the same CPU architecture that we've had for 2 generations. And there's nothing that differentiates any of the consoles from each other except the Switch, right, which is portable. But like, that's one of the reasons that I like the Steam Deck so much, is that it has extra in different things. And so I think that innovation requires a whole like departure from what you would expect. And they're all so invested, and they have so much tangled up in maintaining the status quo that they just can't take risks, you know? And there's nothing pushing them to.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I think the what I really think is that all the innovation is in like, I'm tired of saying this because it sounds like a broken record saying this, but I think most of the innovation in the gaming industry is in the indie space. It really is. They can, like, I'm not saying indie developers can afford to fail, but given that indies have to break out into the scene somehow and then try to like differentiate themselves from like whatever it is that might have inspired them, I think they're more willing to take the risk because it could pay off in the long run. Because I mean, at the end of the day, they don't have like the marketing budgets of, say, Sony or whatever. They would. What's that noise?
Sorry, there's a train station across the street from my house.
Anyways, so they don't have the budget of. God damn it!
Do you not know what a train sounds
Anyways, so they can't really market themselves, and even if they follow best practices for making like $1 million with a video game, they definitely aren't going to succeed without some sort of virality. I believe. Like, let's look at Concord. Concord is a game that people hate for a variety of different reasons, some of which we won't talk about in here because I really don't care about those reasons. But Concord just seems like a game that was made in mind with like making $1 million. Like, it's got that high production value that Sony is like familiar with, and it's a live service game, so there's always that like recurring monetization. And it's in the genre, and it's in a really popular genre that's dominated by Overwatch, the hero shooter genre.
And that's the problem. It's very, very, very competitive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was their biggest downside, is that it's very competitive, and they didn't have enough to distinguish themselves from it.
It kind of just looked like worse Overwatch.
Yeah. Wasn't the former president of PlayStation the one who was like, all of our games are going to be live services from now on? And it's like, so I think it's interesting that Sean Layden here is like, yeah, we're creatively bankrupt, and that's because at least on the PlayStation side, it was his boss that was the problem.
AAA.
Yeah.
They do these, and this is the problem in the C-level. The C-levels get up full of themselves. They get, Unity is a great example. They had the worst CEO I've ever seen, almost destroyed the Unity engine. And his background isn't even a good background for that industry. it's these C-levels that give blanket statements to say, well, we need to do all this. This is the direction. And they don't really know.
Right.
And oh man, it's so bad.
Yeah.
They just, if you want to fix the AAA industry, you pretty much force retire. I mean, they're all going to be fine. They're all millionaires. Force all the C-level all the C-level executives to just retire, put some new people in that know what they're doing, that are creatives, and you can fix it that way, in my opinion.
Yeah. I put passionate people and fans of what they're doing in there to make decisions. It's one of the reasons that like the original Xbox was so like transformative, and why the 360 was so popular was because the people that were running Xbox at the time cared. They cared about making like an excellent console and catering to the gamers. And then as soon as you brought in the guy from EA to run Xbox 360 and develop the next generation, things went to shit. And it's like, you wonder why. It's like they're focused on the next quarter's dividends, not, down the line rearing a generation of people who love your brand and believe in what you're doing.
Yep. It doesn't, it's a very, to not get too much into the capitalism thing, but it's very much kind of how things are going in that direction.
Yeah.
And AAA is following along with it. They have to, a company is seen in their stock market as, if they don't increase that year, as failing.
Mm-hmm.
And they could just do what's happening with Ubisoft. Their stocks are worth what, $2.8? So $2.80, 84 cents. That's ridiculous.
So I do want to say I am starting to see some of this happen with the indie scene. Not saying that this is happening for the same reasons, but yeah, let's look at Vampire Survivors. It's a game that is, it's made like a ton of money, right? But then after Vampire Survivors became successful and blew up, we started seeing multiple different Vampire Survivor likes. In fact, we still see them in the next fest that happened just now, and it's and they're trying to chase off the coattails for the same reason, because it'll make them a lot of money, right? I mean, that's what I think anyways. Maybe I'm just
That's also kind of like a genre kind of opens up a little bit, like a little bit different type of a genre. Even though we've had games similar to it, people might chase, like they're chasing the fame obviously, or like the success, but there's also a need there. And once people are done with Vampire Survivor, maybe they'd want something that's a little different.
Yeah. And Vampire Survivors is also sort of like, it's not a bad game by any means, but it's like, it's a simple game, right? Like you move around, and it's basically the game plays itself. It's almost like a cookie clicker, except, you're moving the guy around. And so that when something is that clonable, people are going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you have like Assassin's Creed games where it's like they have to clone themselves in order to like even have a basis to start from. It's like that's when, and you're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into that. It's when you start to lose. The companies start to lose.
I wouldn't mind someone else cloning Assassin's Creed, all the parkour. That's crazy that no one's tried to.
If an indie studio built something like Assassin's Creed in like Godot or Unity engine, or even Unreal Engine, like an indie studio did it, they would do it, and they'd do it right because they are fans of the game, but especially if it was like a demake or like a PlayStation 1 era graphics looking thing, I would be down for that. I really liked the first Assassin's Creed, but at a certain point it's just unsustainable to try to one up yourself and increase the scale and the scope of the story and whatever. It's like, it's just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable to have it increase every year, but if you want to do it like a novel style where, you do novels every year, I'm okay. Like, or seasonal stuff. Call of Duty, I think, lines up really well with football style stuff. I think Call of Duty, as long as they think about it that way, maybe some years they'll do great, some years they don't. Like, I could see Call of Duty coming out every year. As long as they do enough differences, I don't know. Like, it is such a messy world for these companies because they've hit plateaus.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, it's almost similar in concept to when TV shows like start going bad, right? It's like, you're on what, season 13 of a zombie horror show, And like, what else are you gonna do? You know, one of the examples I like is like Breaking Bad, right? Where it's like it starts off incredibly small. It's a story about a high school teacher, and they take their time, they do it slowly, and eventually he's transformed from like this high school teacher who, you know, diagnosed with cancer to drug kingpin who controls like the southwest of the United States. That's crazy. And if games did that, where they were smart about it and they thought farther ahead than their next release, that could be something. Or if they could reset franchises like Halo. You know, if you reset the Halo franchise, not saying you get rid of Master Chief, but what if Master Chief's next game is something really small but meaningful, and then you build from there?
Mm.
I mean, it's not a bad way to do it. Like Mass Effect's a good one. They're doing kind of a reset. So they had their whole arc, 1, 2, and 3, and then they're going to be they're resetting it with a new arc, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to continue off of Andromeda?
No, I like Andromeda a lot though. I know a lot of people don't, and I'm bitter against those people because I'm not going to get a second one. But because they're like, it has bugs. I honestly don't care. Those bugs are going to they got ironed out, but we don't need to get into it. That's a whole messy topic that would take a whole episode. But no, Mass Effect 4 or 5, whatever they're calling it, is going to be in the same galaxy. It's just going to be after the whole Reaper incident. As long as they don't do live action stuff, like 3 was the peak of like AAA interference into the game. If you've played the series, like it was greatly interfered with. While 2 was like the best, 3 just had some live action stuff in it. It had some like they didn't wrap it up. Like the story, like you make all these choices. They said that all your choices are going to make a difference, and then they don't at the end. You have like 1 or 2 options, and it really pissed people off.
Is it a good time to mention that I've never played any of the Mass Effect games?
You're missing out.
Yeah, I told Noah from Steam Deck HQ this, and he was like exasperated. He was like in shock.
Get it for the Steam Deck. They play great on the Steam Deck. The Legendary Edition. It's story-wise one of my favorite stories in any game. I love it.
I do have the Legendary
huge
Edition of Mass Effect. That's all 3. That's the entire trilogy, right? The original trilogy, the Legendary Edition.
Yeah.
So apparently I do have it. I don't know when this happened though.
They've had some good sales over the years.
Yeah, I probably bought it for like $10. Hey,
give it a try. It's really fun.
The first game, I'll say this: the first game, it doesn't play as well, even with the remaster, as well as the second. Yeah, got to power through the first one. The second one is peak.
I've heard that consensus a lot, though. Yes, I will keep that in mind as I try. If I try it out, I mean when I try it out, not if. Speaking of which, I think the big question now is whether or not AAA's can continue, because it's pretty clear that Ubisoft is changing. Like, remember how Ubisoft pioneered the idea of like you pre-order a game, then you get it like a week before everyone else. Like, remember that?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, yes. They're not doing that for Assassin's Creed Shadows, and apparently they're doing away with the whole seasonal model or whatever it is that they've been doing with it. And if you pre-order, you get the expansion. Not an ad, by the way. But the question is, can they continue with like the path they're going down with games being more expensive to make?
See, it's about restraint, man. Like, they could set a limited budget and put a small team on the next Assassin's Creed game. They could do that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and they could use their marketing to set expectations of what the next game is going to be.
I agree.
But they don't want to do that for whatever reason. I mean, maybe they do now with their stock tanking, right? But like, it's all about restraint, and it's like you can't market the next big game if it's not going to be that, right? Like,
right. It's
they almost announced the game before they even work on it.
Yeah.
Is how it is. Like, oh, it's going to be every year or something like that. Like, and these companies are starting to get away from that a little bit more. You just can't do that. Like, that's not how the creative process works.
Right.
You can't just, okay, in a year, we need and obviously they usually, like with Call of Duty, they switch between 2 or 3 different companies, but it's just not sustainable over a period. And I think it would be better if they split that budget for that Assassin's Creed and say, when you're ready with this, we'll release it. We'll put the other one on a whole new IP and with a similar aspect to Assassin's Creed, and that would be hedging your bets. Like that's splitting and like really betting on a new future instead of this just betting in all on the same thing that's going to eventually atrophy.
Was it called Grow Home? The one with the red robot? What was the game that Ubisoft? It was like an indie game but it was like backed by Ubisoft. They published it, and it had like these interesting controls. You were a red robot and you climbed a beanstalk or something, if I remember correctly. Like it was cool and it was interesting.
I know what you're talking about.
Sounds familiar.
I feel like it's called Grow Home.
It is Grow Home now. Yeah.
And like publishers like Ubisoft are so well positioned to make games like that, and to make games like Rayman Legends and stuff that are existing, or they're either new franchises or they're existing franchises that don't cost $800 million to produce, and that can make several $1 million and make actual money, right? And it's baffling to me why they decide to not do that.
It builds rapport too.
Yeah.
I mean, back with Electronic Arts, when they were doing like Dead Space and Mirror's Edge and like these kind of interesting experimental games, and I was like, dude, this is like the Electronic Arts Renaissance. They're gonna come out with like a new Command and Conquer game. It's gonna be super cool. And then they just stopped doing that, and it's like, why would you stop doing that? I don't know.
So I will say I do. So let's bring it back to Hollywood for a second. So Hollywood has this concept of a bottle episode for movies or TV shows, where it's an episode that, or like a movie that takes place almost entirely in one set, which, reduces the cost of the movie. Like, have you guys watched a movie called 10 Cloverfield Lane?
Oh yeah, that's so good.
You should watch it. It's essentially it's semi-related to the other Cloverfield movie with the giant monsters and the aliens and shit, but it's like only like tangentially related. Essentially, it's about a girl who essentially gets into a car crash and wakes up in a place in like a little like bunker where when aliens and stuff are like supposedly irradiating the surface. I'm not gonna say too much because it's gonna enter spoiler territory.
That's
but
interesting.
I would definitely watch it. It's really good.
Yeah, John Goodman is in it, and
John Goodman's scary.
He's super good.
Super scary.
Man. Yeah.
I'll have to watch it. Okay.
But it's like, it's self-contained, right? Like there's maybe 5 or 6 sets until for most of the movie, you're only in like 4 or 5 different sets, and it's 3 characters, right? Like it's just it's a limited budget. It was made by Dan Trachtenberg. Do you remember the Totally Rad show on Revision 3? Dan Trachtenberg was one of the hosts of that, and he made like a Portal short and he posted it on YouTube, and like people really loved that. And it's like you could give visionary auteurs in the gaming industry a small team and a modest budget, and they could make a game and it would be awesome, and it could make money, like profitable. But these big companies they don't just want profits, they want record-breaking profits.
I'd love to see Kojima try to make a game without any celebrity contacts and like a limited budget.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting. He's pretty busy with his his Death Stranding too, right? It would be interesting though. I think we're going to see a renaissance. I think we're going to see these companies. They're going to have to, because some will either die or get picked apart. Like we'll see. Investment companies like to do that. They like to grab these companies and pick apart IPs and stuff like that. But eventually it's going to have to stop, and we'll probably start seeing some of them maybe pick up indies again. I know that investments type of stuff usually correlates with inflation rates, and we don't need to get into the mathematics and all that. Honestly, what we need to do is probably wrap this up.
Yeah, that's true. Don't you have something at 1:30, Gardner?
I do. I was not even keeping track of the time.
This is also going to be a super long episode, which is good for everyone that's listening / watching, but it's going to be 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, guys, this was a really great conversation. I had a blast.
Yeah, me too, man.
Oh yeah, I love talking about this type of stuff.
Me too.
Sorry if I got on my soapbox a little bit.
Oh, I did too.
Bit,
no problems.
That's what we love. That's what we love to see. That's what the audience wants to see, at least.
Like and subscribe. That's the big
like
part.
and subscribe, please. I'm surprised we didn't say that. I'm surprised we didn't say that the entire time.
Answer your door. Trains, all that. Sorry, I gotta see
That's my
see
phone.
everyone.
See ya.
All right, see ya.